So today we're going to tackle a huge topic, climate change. But we're not going to start with a bunch of charts and graphs. Nope. We're going to start with a question from a child.
Why is my school underwater? Just let that sink in for a second. This is a real question from a kid in Pakistan who is just trying to get to class while standing in floodwater. It's a question that cuts right through all the noise, doesn't it? It gets to the very heart of what we're talking about today. How do we get from a massive global issue to a local reality that's this devastating? Okay, let's get into it.
To really get what's going on, it helps to think of it like this. Our planet is sick. It's basically telling us, hey, I'm running a fever. And this isn't just some random bug. There's a clear cause. And like any fever, it has symptoms. And one of those symptoms is a child's school being completely flooded.
So that's the crucial point. When we talk about climate change, we're really talking about this planetary fever. The carbon emissions we release from cars, factories, you name it, they act like this giant invisible blanket wrapped around the Earth. And what does a blanket do? It traps heat. So the planet gets warmer, and that extra warmth throws everything totally out of whack.
And that warming kicks off this devastating chain reaction, like a line of dominoes. First, those emissions warm up the air. That warmer air then causes the massive glaciers in the Himalayas, a super important source of fresh water, to melt way too fast. All that extra water, combined with these supercharged, heavier monsoon rains, well, it has nowhere to go. And the result? Catastrophic flooding.
And this is where the story becomes about more than just science. It becomes about justice. Because the burden of this planetary fever is not shared equally. Not even close. The human cost is immense, and it's being paid by the very people who are least responsible.
Look at this number. Less than 1%. Just take a second and think about what that could possibly represent in the middle of a global crisis. What does this tiny fraction really mean?
It's Pakistan's contribution to all the global carbon emissions that are causing the planet's fever. Less than 1%. They are on the absolute front lines of climate change, facing some of the most severe consequences you can imagine, while having done almost nothing to cause the problem in the first place.
And when you actually see it visualized like this, the injustice is just staggering. The disparity is so clear. On one side, you have this huge contribution from the rest of the world, and on the other, that tiny little sliver that represents Pakistan. It's a stark, almost unbelievable contrast between cause and effect. And, this isn't just data. This is about people's lives. When a farmer looks out at their fields, the source of their food and their income, and it's all just drowned, they know this isn't just a bad storm. As this quote says, their homes, crops, and very lives are at risk. They see it for what it is, the direct result of a changing climate. So where does that leave us? It can feel pretty overwhelming, but the story doesn't have to end with disaster, because this is our shared future. And a global problem like this means we all have to be part of the solution.
And that's really the key, isn't it? This isn't one country's problem to solve. As children from around the world are telling us right here, the crisis is global. We have to act together. The responsibility is shared, and so is the path forward.
The formula to get there is actually pretty simple. It starts with awareness. Understanding the connections, like the ones we've just talked through. But awareness by itself isn't enough. It has to be paired with meaningful action. And together, those two things create the outcome we all want. A safer future.
And that action doesn't have to be some abstract idea. It can be really concrete. We're talking about things like planting more trees to soak up carbon and stabilize the soil, building smarter infrastructure, like homes that can actually withstand flooding, tackling pollution right at the source, and maybe most importantly, fostering that global cooperation needed to make a real difference on a planetary scale.
So, we end where we began, with a question. But this time, the question isn't for someone else, it's for all of us. If this crisis is truly global, and if the solution requires us to act together, then what is your role? What's my role? What is our part to play in creating that safer future? That's something to think about.